contacts traced, how many people had said they would agree to isolate. They said that data would be published shortly, but they didn't have it available then. That was the same message at the press conference. So it is hard to really evaluate how well it's going. Matt Hancock and John Newton, who's in charge of testing for the government, insisting that things were going as planned, it was working as they hoped. But until we have that data, of course, it's very hard to say. And its second point to make on this, Nigel, is the Boris Johnson had suggested that when it launched, it wouldn't be fully operational. Number 10 also unable to say today exactly when the system would be fully operational. And just on specifically on your point, when it was put to them that he'd promised a world-beating system, they said that was the aim. It wasn't what he had promised when it launched. So it does, according to the government, it is working, but there's still more to do to get it exactly to where they want it to be.
Yeah, and I was out and about this morning, Ben, and I saw some children going into primary schools, all sort of skipping along happily and looking pleased to go back. Was there much talk today about the extent of easing so far?
Well, we don't know the figures, Nigel. Number 10 also said that it was too early, of course, to know exactly how many school children had gone back. They think about 80% of schools are opening, but there is survey data to suggest that only half of the number of children who could or the government thought should go back today actually were planning to do so. Parents were planning to send them back. Now, there's been a bit of arguing over the weekend, shall we say, between ministers and some of their scientific advisors, because in the last few days, you've had some of those scientists speaking up a bit more and suggesting that they thought that the easing was happening a bit too quickly. I thought it was an interesting line from Matt Hancock today. He answered questions on this, insisting that the steps they had taken were cautious and moderate. But he also said in his opening statement, in the war against coronavirus, we are all on the same side. I think the meaning of that was twofold. Firstly, urging the public to continue to follow the rules, but perhaps also to the government's own scientists saying, let's stick together on this, because there has been a bit of disagreement in the last few days.
Absolutely. Ben, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's just listen, shall we, to what we were told about the test and trace system. This was Boris Johnson in the House of Commons on May the 20th.
We will have a test, track and trace operation that will be world-beating, and yes, it will be in place. It will be in place by June the 1st.
Pretty clear. World-beating and in place by June the 1st. And then last Wednesday, Matt Hancock surprised us by rolling it out early and starting it on Thursday. This was Hancock last Wednesday.
Today, we formally launch NHS Test and Trace. This is an incredibly important milestone for the country, and I know people will want to hear about it. This is being launched today in England, and the instructions to people are clear. If you get symptoms, isolate immediately and get a test. If you are contacted by NHS Test and Trace, instructing you to isolate, you must. It is your civic duty. So you avoid unknowingly spreading the virus, and you help to break the chain of transmission. This will be voluntary at first because we trust everyone to do the right thing. But we can quickly make it mandatory if that's what it takes.
Now, that was Matt Hancock last Wednesday, and I think we'd expected a lot of people to comment, to say they'd had a message. Some were worried if they got contacted, would it be a hoax? Would it be the NHS? How would it work? I have yet to speak to a single person who has been contacted by the NHS test and trace system and asked to self-isolate. So please, anybody out there that has had a call, that has been contacted, please share that with us on 0345 6060 973. And the debate I want to have with you tonight, is this a government that overpromises and underdelivers, whether it is on test and trace, whether it is on testing in general, whether it is on the delivery of PPE or any other aspect of the coronavirus crisis? Does this government overpromise and underdeliver? Do you know what? For once, I won't give you my opinion. You can ring up and persuade me either way. I'll tell you at the end what I think. Let's go to Edgware, speak to Daniel, a new caller. Good evening, Daniel.
Hello, Nigel. Good evening to you, sir.
Welcome. So, do they kind of up the ante and promise us the earth and then
Absolutely.
never quite deliver?
It's totally ridiculous. I voted Conservative in the December election with high hopes of what would be happening in the next 5 years. And you cannot believe how disappointed I am by Boris. It's a total joke the way he's handled this crisis.
But Daniel, Boris says, Daniel, hang on. Boris says that they've taken all the right decisions at the right time, guided by the science.
Well, they would blame the scientists, wouldn't they? I mean, it's a blame game, and it's going to be a blame game until the official inquiry is going to come out in a few. Well, it's going to be years before that comes out. But from what I've seen, all he does is rely on his advisors to instruct him to do this, do that. You know, I live half the time in the south of France. The way Macron has handled it is exemplary.
I agree. I thought that presidential address from the Elysee to the French people, where he said, look, we underestimated this, we made mistakes, I'm sorry, we're going to get this back on track. I thought that degree of contrition was amazing.
Absolutely. Held his hands up, said he'd made mistakes, accepted that things had gone wrong, and promised to get things right in order. But Boris, it's just one catalogue, it's one mistake after another. And, you know, it's so disappointing.
But is it really, Daniel, is it really Boris? Because actually, we haven't seen... I mean, Boris was very ill.
Of course not.
Boris was very ill, and he was away for a long time, and we haven't seen a huge amount of him. Actually, the person in the front line that makes these promises all the time is Matt Hancock.
Absolutely. I mean, he's like the de facto prime minister at the moment. You know, it just seems like Boris has just hid himself away in a cupboard. You know, just closed with his fingers in his ears, not wanting to take decisions that have to be taken. I mean, this track and trace. It's proving to be an absolute disaster. Complete and utter disaster.
Well, we were just told by Matt Hancock that it's all going according to plan.
Of course, yes.
You don't believe him, do you?
No.
I can tell. So, Daniel, as opposed to promising the earth and perhaps not quite matching up to it, what style of leadership would you now like to see?
I would just like a bit of honesty. That's all I want.
Okay.
You know, honestly, like, as Macron, honesty is the way forward.
Okay. No, Daniel, you've made the point, made it beautifully. Thank you for calling. Let's go to Abingdon and speak to Dean, another new caller. Good evening, Dean.
Hello, Nigel. I've been following you for a long time now, and first chance I had to speak to you.
Well, welcome.
I think the government I don't believe a word that's come out of their mouth since the start of the virus. I was told by my clinician in January that a pandemic was on its way, and I got to self-isolate immediately, and I won't be coming out until a vaccine has been found. I've had a respiratory problem since I was young.
So you are vulnerable.
It affects my breathing. I've got a machine at home as well. You know.
So Dean,
I don't believe
when did you lose anymore? When did you lose faith?
The actual crown of everything. They actually said on Friday at the press conference, people that are shielded, we're looking into it. On Saturday they released it, and they reckoned it wasn't rushed.
Well, I think the announcement of Test and Trace last Wednesday took us all by surprise, that they were launching it on Thursday as opposed to launching it today. But I think that was to divert attention away from a bit of a row that was going on.
I think it is. We know what row that is.
Yeah,
and I think one of the problems I have with it is that people like Mr. DC are putting everybody else at risk, and there's lots of people out there doing it now, and I feel even more frightened than I did at the start of the
but then against that, Dean,
pandemic.
But against that, Dean, we couldn't stay. We couldn't. I mean, look, if this easing was allied to a well-beating test and trace system, I think we'd be in a very good place. But despite that, we can't keep the country locked down forever, Dean, can we?
That's sad.
Well, but we can't. Dean, thank you very much. I wish you well, by the way. Obviously, very, very worrying times for people like you with that condition. Marion says on Twitter, Matt Hancock talks as if he is talking to naughty children. I'm not a fan. Yes, he is a bit like the sort of school prefect who suddenly feels, because he's wearing a badge, he is frightfully, frightfully important. Richard in Knightsbridge says, at the risk of stating the bleeding obvious, NHS Test and Trace will only work properly if everyone has a smartphone. Richard, not everyone does, but I think it's fair to say now the vast majority do. Please, if you've been contacted by NHS Test and Trace, come and share it with us. 0345 6060 973. And join the debate. Does this government overpromise and underdeliver? Or is the question a bit unfair? You tell me. It's 6:15. News headlines with Bill Overton.
The Health Secretary confirms the number of people to have died in the UK after testing positive for COVID-19 is now above 39,000. He says the UK, though, is winning the battle against coronavirus. As England relaxes some lockdown measures, Nicola Sturgeon's appealed to the public in Scotland to stick to their restrictions. The weather dry and clear mostly tonight, cloudier with the odd shower further north and for Northern Ireland, with a low of 8 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. On the M4 going into town, there's a lane closed, the junction 3 for Hayes because of an accident. It's slow in the centre of town around Marble Arch after a demonstration earlier on, but all the lanes are open now. The A5 Kilburn High Road southbound is closed because of some unsafe scaffolding before Willesden Lane, so there are delays on the approach. It's very slow in Tottenham on the A10 High Road in both directions at Seven Sisters because of roadworks, and there were delays in West Brompton on Old Brompton Road in both directions after an accident earlier between West Brompton Station and Earl's Court. All the lanes are back open again.
This is LBC.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are working to
get things moving.
Sending spices to novice cooks.
Airbands to kids.
Desks for home offices.
Delivering the goods.
Shipping footballs.
Fruit trees.
And dishwashers.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
LBC.
At Direct Line, we usually take out radio ads to talk about ourselves. But this ad isn't about us. It's about Fair Share, a charity who are tirelessly working here in South East London and across the country, putting others first to deliver food to vulnerable people. That's why we're providing their volunteers with personal protective equipment so they can continue to help and stay safe. If you'd like to support Fair Share or find out more about their work, please visit their website, fairshare.org.uk. That's FARE share.org.uk. Fair Share. They're on it.
At Lloyds Bank, we know that money is a concern for a lot of people during this time.
You just put pressure on yourself all the time. You just want to do your absolute best.
You automatically then think,
it's my fault.
Yeah, this is because I've not
done X, Y, Z.
Yeah, I've not raised them right.
Whatever's playing on your mind at the moment, Lloyds Bank, in partnership with Mental Health UK, can offer you support and advice. Visit lloydsbank.com/mentalhealth.
We're out of mozzarella. Gianna, put Glabarni on my shopping list.
Sorry, I didn't quite get that.
Gianna, add Glabarni mozzarella to my shopping list.
Sorry, did you mean Galbani?
Yes, Glabarni.
Did you mean Galbani, Italy's #1 mozzarella?
Yes, Galabinarni on my shopping list, please. Gianna?
For proper Italian mozzarella, it's got to be Galbani.
TfL has a plan to help London reopen carefully, safely and sustainably. You can do your bit by continuing to work from home if you can and avoiding public transport. If you must use public transport, avoid peak hours, wear a face covering and wash your hands before and after travel. For everyone's safety, we regularly clean our services with antiviral disinfectant and will be providing hand sanitizer across our network. For more information, search TfL's Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
25,000 people have been recruited to the NHS Test and Trace scheme. It was supposed by the 1st of June to be a world-beating system. I await any one of you to call me and tell me you've been contacted by them. 0345 6060 973. And today is the 1st of June. Some of you, many of you, watched the film Dunkirk that was out 3 years ago. It was a big hit here, big hit in America and around the world. And you remember the star of the film was Mark Rylance, who played the owner of a small motor cruiser who, with his son and a young Sea Scout, went across to Dunkirk. Well, 80 years ago today, a guy called Cyril Lightoller, upon whom the Mark Rylance figure was based, took his Thames pleasure cruiser, Sundowner, appropriately named, took it across to Dunkirk. He loaded 120 troops onto it. Goodness only knows how he did it. And he sailed it back into Ramsgate Harbour. You'll see in the film, when the Messerschmitts are coming for the boat, he's going hard to port, hard to starboard. And he learnt that from his son, who was a fighter pilot killed in the war, who said that a Messerschmitt can't fire its guns until it raises by 10 to 15 degrees before it fires. So the film was based on a true figure. The boat is there in Ramsgate Harbour, and when we're all travelling around again, it's worth going to have a look at it. Interestingly, that man was retired, and he'd been the highest surviving officer on the Titanic. So there we are. They were events, amazing events, 80 years ago today. Back to Test and Trace. I'm going to Manchester to speak to James. James, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. Thank you for taking my call. Nigel, I've been one of your biggest supporters for over 10 years. I've been on to most of your marches, on the Leave Me Leave rallies.
Yep.
I've got a massive poster for you that cost me 80 quid, which I'm going to deliver to LBC, by the way.
Right.
And it says Nigel Farage for Deputy PM. It cost me a lot of money, but I couldn't come down at the time. But basically, Nigel, I think as much as I support you, I think we need to give the government a little bit of leeway here. This is something that has happened to all governments all around the world, and this is what I wanted to say to you, Nigel. I mean, I'm a 60s baby, right? I grew up in the 1960s, 70s, where I saw Harold Wilson, I've seen Margaret Thatcher, I've seen every PM that's come in, and has come and gone. I don't think anyone could have handled this any better. We have the Labour Party that keeps saying, we can do better. Well, I'd love to see them, Nigel, try, because at the end of the day, I don't think it would have been any better. In actual fact, I think it would have been worse. And I think what
James,
stop knocking.
James, here's my complaint, right? No one doubts that this is a very difficult thing to deal with. All right? No one doubts that for a moment. The question I'm asking you is, why do they keep making promises that they can't possibly deliver? Why did Boris Johnson tell the country on the 20th of May that by the 1st of June, 25,000 people would be operational in a world-beating system? And I cannot find, James, a single caller who's as yet been contacted. Why not say to the public, look, we're putting something in place. We've got technical problems with the app. It's not going to be easy. We will get there in the end. The point I'm making, James, and I think the point that quite a lot of people share, is they try to put a gloss on everything rather than giving us the unvarnished truth.
Well, Nigel, I totally agree with that, because in 2018 I got head and neck cancer, right? I didn't get over it until, get my all clear until 2019. I've never had a letter from anybody to say that I'm vulnerable, which is why I just go out and do my own thing, get my shopping and come back in again. I live on my own anyway, but I go on and get my shopping, come back in, I don't do anything. I never had any of the support. I didn't get free deliveries. I didn't get anything. But what I'm trying to do is try and take responsibility for myself. I totally agree with you. I think the government has totally mashed this up. They really have. It's been a complete conglomerate of a cacophony of complete utter mess.
So there we are, James. My criticisms and the criticisms that you've heard from me are not unjustified, are they?
No, they're not unjustified at all. But I also think, Nigel, I don't necessarily think that any other government would have done it.
All right, no, James, you've made the point, made it well. And listen, keep well, look after yourself, and thank you for the call. Well, our first caller tonight was Daniel, who said he'd voted for Boris enthusiastically and now felt disappointed. And I got this on Twitter. Oh, no, not another one. A voter who has high hopes of one of the parties that has ruled politics for decades going to be different. I love the sarcasm. Bob in Leeds noted something tonight. Matt Hancock deliberately did not say tonight that government decisions are guided by the science. Why has it been dropped? Bob, the reason they've dropped it is there is such disagreement in Sage about the pace of easing. So we're not quite getting that mantra that we'd had all the way through. Philip from Whiteleaf sarcastically says, perhaps we should rejoin the European Union and hand over to President Macron. What do you think, Nigel? No, Macron doesn't run the European Union. Mrs. Merkel's the one that really runs it. Right, let's go to Portsmouth and speak to David. David, good evening.
Hi, good evening, Nigel. And thanks, Maggie. How are you?
So, do they overpromise and underdeliver?
Yeah, of course they do. Yeah.
Why? Why?
I spotted it. Well, it's like I said to Maggie. I'm a salesman in my early years, and I'm guessing you know a little bit about sales psychology. How to load questions, get a nodding dog answer, and get people to agree with you. You know, and I think for Boris, for all of his good intentions, he knows how to sell something. So you know, we'll have a well-beaten system. There's just like me saying I'm going to get up tomorrow morning. You know, it was easy for him to throw in someone might call it picking it up sort of phrase, whatever, you know. So if I'm calling you and I'm trying to get you to buy into my product, I'm going to tell you it's the best out there, aren't I?
Yes, but you can't disappoint once, twice, three times. Otherwise, you lose the customer, don't you?
Yes, you can.
Can you?
Do you?
Well, I think in the end you do.
Hunting and farming, Nigel. It's called, you know this hunting and farming model. You heard of that?
Yeah.
Where you hunt out your customer, you get them on that line. There's a good example where a famous car manufacturer let their first production line come off with a fault, and it was a fault with a door or something like that. Customers would complain about it on the first day. They paid a lot of money for this car. The company would take it back, fix it very easily, knowing what the fault was, and give it back. The customer was won over by their sense of service, and they've been a customer ever since.
Yeah, no.
And it's easy.
David, how you deal...
You keep them, you farm them.
Yeah, how you deal with complaints is an essential part of sales. I know that. I've done that. I understand that. I just wonder, so will they keep getting away with this, do you think?
Yes. As
Okay.
long as we let them.
Fine. All right, David, thank you. Let's go to Newham and speak to Cody, a new caller. Welcome.
Hi, Nigel.
Welcome.
So they are completely over-promising and under-delivering. No, they have no strategy whatsoever. The easing of lockdown was done too fast, and it wasn't even done properly. The app doesn't work. Nobody that I know was contacted by testing and tracing. They're asking soon people who travel to the UK to be in quarantine, while countries like Romania or Poland have done it during the peak. That's when it was supposed to be done, not now. And it's just crazy. And they're clearly not following science. I mean, it's pretty logical if you look at it. So they've said that all scientists agree that there may be a potential second wave. So they're expecting it. If it will happen, I hope not, but if it will happen, it would happen during the autumn or the winter time. And take a look at the furlough scheme. They've set it to end in October. So if there would be a second wave, what will happen then? Are we going to be on furlough till October? Then for one day go to work, then be back on furlough?
Well,
makes no sense.
And that's a long way down the road, Cody. What style of government do you think would be appropriate for this crisis, then?
I think they should have acted a little bit more tough. They should have been tough on everybody, including Dominic Cummings. People have stayed in house because the government originally seemed to be acting tough, as a lot of people were expecting. The government was saying you need to do this to save lives, save the NHS. But they've just proven to be dishonest. So the government should have been tough, should be tough, and should be honest.
All right, Cody, thank you for your call. Let's go to Lymington in Hampshire and speak to Alexandra, a new caller. Good evening.
Hi, Nigel.
Good evening.
I just wanted to ring to say that for months I've supported Boris.
Yes.
So glad when he got the big majority,
yes,
which you helped him get.
Yep.
Very glad when he pushed Brexit through.
Mm-hmm.
Then I felt sorry for him. Floods came, I felt sorry for him. And then he got the bloody virus. Felt sorry for him again.
Yep.
But now, you asked us now what style of government would we want?
Yes.
We just want a government that...
Alexandra, we got a rotten line. I'm going to come back to you after we've gone to the news, because that line just is not good enough. Now, Tony Abbott says, look, always aim high and nearly achieve, then aim low and achieve nowhere near what you would have done if you hadn't mobilised the effort. As a businessman, you would know that makes sense. If we get the system up and running in a week or so, that's a great result. rather than getting it up and running at the end of July. Tony, I've always believed in life, be ambitious, aim high and accept you may not quite get there. I get that. What I am questioning is why, given we've had some real disappointments on testing figures, some real disappointments on PPE getting out around the country, why on earth tell us on the 20th of May that by the 1st of June it'll be a world-beating system? We all knew it wouldn't be. We all knew it was unachievable, and I think the complaint is just be a bit more straight with us. Now, talking of straight talking, in a moment, I play an exclusive interview with former Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott, and we're going to talk with him about China, about Huawei, but in particular about the seaborne invasion of Australia a decade ago and how they dealt with it. But for now, it is 6:30, and that means it's time for the news with Bill Overton.
The Health Secretary says the test and trace system the government's using to deal with the coronavirus spread is working well. At the daily Downing Street briefing, we heard a high number of contacts are now being identified. A further 111 deaths have been confirmed across the UK, taking the total to 39,045. It's the lowest daily fatality figure for more than 2 months. Unions estimate as few as 40% of pupils attended schools in England today, with primaries reopened to 3-year groups. Head teachers described the number of parents keeping their children home as variable. President Trump's told state governors in the US they need to dominate violent protests that have spread across cities there. He's been meeting with law enforcement and security officials following more unrest over the death of the unarmed African-American George Floyd. Weather tonight, dry and clear mostly, some mist and fog around, cloudier with the odd shower further north and for Northern Ireland, and a low of 8 degrees.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Weekday mornings from 7.
Business Secretary Alok Sharma. Secretary of State, if there were a second wave, would the government find it necessary to lock down again?
It is unlikely that the R value will go above 1. But as I said, if we do find that happens, then we will have to look to see whether we have to reverse some of the measures that have been introduced, some of the relaxations. And nobody wants that.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
With Xero. Get your business digital ready with Xero accounting software.
LBC.
Welcome to a whole new look history with Sky History.
I'm going to take you on a journey.
You can expect more than ever before.
Go big or go home.
More quests.
You're holding a piece of history right there, man.
More skill.
We're men of action, not men of words.
More reasons to smile.
It's all true.
And even more explosive shows. Because we're not just showing history, we're making it. Sky History. Available now at no extra cost for Sky TV customers. See sky.com for terms and conditions.
Pets in a Pickle have your pets covered, with pet insurance policies as unique as they are. Visit petsinApickle.co.uk.
Here's the thing about block management. If you do it yourself,
you're over here sorting out the insurance, and here keeping everything compliant. Don't forget the grounds maintenance and the service charges.
And that's just what you need to do today. But because the ABC Estates block management team can look after every aspect of your property portfolio, from repairs to service charge collections, your time can, at last, be better spent elsewhere. Be as happy as Larry with block management from Aldermartin, Baines and Cuthbert. Talk to us today. Call 0800 888 6688 or visit abcestates.co.uk.
If you received advice to transfer your pension into a German property investment, you may be a victim of a pension scam. If you transferred out of your final salary pension or into a SIP, Money Redress are here to help. Just text yes to 82344. You don't need to use a claims management company to make your complaint. You can refer it to the Financial Ombudsman Service or the Financial Services Compensation Scheme for free. However, Money Redress are one of the UK's leading claims specialists, claiming over £47 million for missold pensions and investments, with a 5-star Trustpilot rating. Our largest successful claim is over £146,000. Get your claim started today. Text yes to 82344.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Now, there's a 9-hour time difference with Australia, so doing a live interview with there is not very easy. But earlier on today, I spoke exclusively to Tony Abbott, former Australian Prime Minister from 2013 to 2015. And I spoke to him about illegal vessels coming into Australia, chiefly from Indonesia, and how they dealt with it.
We had a similar situation, in some respects at least, back in the Rudd Gillard era. The Australian Navy was patrolling the seas between Java and Christmas Island. We were routinely coming across people smuggling boats. Inevitably, these boats were unseaworthy. Our Navy picked up the passengers and took them to Christmas Island, which was exactly what they wanted. So it wasn't a coast guard so much as a coast guide. And our Navy was effectively acting almost as an agent for the people smugglers.
Like a taxi.
Now, it just a water taxi service for people smugglers. Now, the Navy didn't like it. They hated it because they could see what was going on here. They could see that the people smugglers were effectively having a lend of us. But the bleeding hearts that were then in charge of the Australian government said, well, what option have we got? Well, if you keep giving the people smugglers a product to sell, you will keep getting people smuggling. And if you have people smuggling, inevitably you'll have deaths at sea. And the estimate is that something between 2 and 3% of those who set out, over 1,000 people in this case, died at sea in that period between when I stopped the boats and after Kevin Rudd and others had started them up again. So, look, you've got to be firm to be fair. You've got to be tough to be kind in the end. And the kindest thing you can do is close down the people smuggling trade. And that means as soon as you come across a people smuggling boat, stopping it and taking it back to the place from which it came. So in the long run, it's much better for the French and for France if these boats don't take off, or if they do take off, that they're stopped midway across the channel and the people brought back to France. Otherwise, France is going to have a problem and Britain is going to have a problem. But it does require a rather hard-headed approach which addresses this problem at its core. You can understand why people from rotten countries would want to get to wonderful countries. And frankly, you can understand why Calais would just be a way station. Who wouldn't want to get to the United Kingdom? Such a wonderful, free and fair and prosperous country. But as long as the French facilitate their passage, France will have a problem as well as Britain will have a problem. But if it takes a bit of toughness on Britain's part, Bojo has his mojo, let's face it, let's send them back.
That was Tony Abbott on how to deal with illegal migration coming into a country by boat. I really hope Priti Patel is listening to that. I also asked him what he thought about Huawei being involved in our 5G network.
We took the view, and this has been a bipartisan position, that Huawei is, in essence, subject to direction by the Chinese Communist government. In fact, at Chinese law, all businesses are required to obey all the dictates of the Chinese Communist government, and the Chinese Communist government is vastly more risk at doing what it wants than any Western democratic government is. And why would you allow into the heart of your sensitive telecommunications infrastructure an entity which is effectively an agent for the Chinese Communist government, which it's more and more clear is no longer a good international citizen, but a pretty threatening international bully. So I hope that the reconsideration of Huawei's participation in Britain's 5G network can go ahead.
And finally, I asked him about the ongoing worsening situation in Hong Kong.
I've got nothing but admiration for the people of Hong Kong. It's wonderful to see the Union Jack being flown on the streets of Hong Kong by protesters who remember the priceless legacy they got from Britain. Market freedoms, the rule of law, and a degree of political pluralism. Obviously, the Chinese Communist government finds all of this poison, and they are doing their damnedest to stop it from spreading. In the end, not only would this be a tragedy for the people of Hong Kong, it would be a bitter tragedy for the whole world because as things stand, along with London, New York and Singapore, Hong Kong is one of the great international cities. And it will be sad for China because one of the reasons why China has been so economically successful in recent decades is the proximity of Hong Kong and the exposure to the kind of sophisticated market mechanisms that up till now Hong Kong has been so expert at.
Well, that was my chat with Tony Abbott earlier on today. There's a longer version of that out there on the internet. And on Hong Kong, yesterday on the show, we had a heartfelt plea from one of the leaders there of the pro-democracy movement, Jonathan Wong, who implored us, and we promised him, Joshua Wong, we promised him that we would write to Boris Johnson to say, can you please take the lead in this? Don't just go along and co-sign letters with Australia and Canada. Take the lead on this because, this was a former British colony. Well, we didn't need to do it because a letter was sent today to Dominic Raab, our Foreign Secretary, and it was sent by 7 former Foreign Secretaries headed up by Sir Malcolm Rifkind. And this is what they said. When it comes to Hong Kong's autonomy under the one country, two systems model, many of our international partners continue to take their cue from the British government. I'm sure you would agree, as a co-signatory of the Sino-British Joint Declaration, the UK must be seen to be leading and coordinating the international response to this crisis and ensuring the integrity of the treaty lodged at the United Nations in 1985, one country, two systems. So, Joshua Wong, we haven't needed to do it because 7 former foreign secretaries have, and Boris Johnson does. We have a moral obligation here. He's got to take the lead on Hong Kong. Now, before the break, we were speaking to Alexandra in Lymington. The line was rotten. We're going to try again. Alexandra.
Hi, any better?
That's better. Now, you were telling us you were telling us about your list of enthusiasms for Boris Johnson and what he was doing.
Absolutely. Cheered him on, and with your help, he got a brilliant majority. Then he was laying out the list that he would do for the northern part of our country, what he was going to do, all the infrastructure.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Then we got the floods. Then we got the virus. Then he got ill, and he's come back. But he's half the man he was. He's a great, rousing speaker, but he seems like a very deflated person now. And I really, really am disappointed in the whole of this government, in the way they've handled this. All we need is the truth. Whether it's bad or good, we'll stay with our governments if they give us the truth, and they're not.
And is this part of the over-promising and under-delivering, Alexandra?
Absolutely, it's the whole thing. You say about style. We don't want style. We want someone that's going to tell us the truth. And I've never been particularly a Tory supporter, but I supported these to the end because they've been brilliant. Have been, but no, not anymore.
And the test and trace system, Alexandra, that we've heard.
I was saying to your researcher, I live on the Isle of. I live in Hampshire, and I can see the Isle of Wight from my window.
Yes.
And I thought, what the heck have they chose that island for originally? Because I've been over there. A lot of the people are elderly. And a lot of the people, probably like me, don't have all the tech that you would need.
The smartphones,
to keep it up and running.
Yeah.
And it's been a disaster. They keep saying things, and a week later we ask the questions, and it's not happening.
Well, I have to say,
a letdown.
Alexandra, you've made it very, very clear on 2 phone calls. Your views, the second one we could hear. Thank you. Let's go to Marlow and speak to Graham, another new caller. Graham, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you?
Welcome. I'm fine. I mean, now, please tell me, Graham, please make my day and tell me that you've been contacted by NHS Test and Trace.
No, I haven't. But
right.
I think the word hindsight is a great word to be using tonight because no one could have predicted this pandemic. I mean, I personally think, and I think a lot of people think, the government have done the best they possibly can.
Okay.
They've thrown a huge amount of money. God knows how much this is going to cost the economy with furloughing, and they've been very careful on unlocking people from their homes. People are desperate to get back to work. I think a lot of them are. And I don't think the government could have done much more,
So when Boris Johnson, Graham, says to us as recently as the 20th of May that by the 1st of June there'll be 25,000 people working on the NHS test and trace scheme and it'll be a world-beating system, why use those words, Graham?
Fine. OK, well, sometimes governments, in an attempt to try and improve things, overpromise. We all... maybe,
all right, so you agree then?
Overpromise.
So you agree with the premise? You agree with the premise?
Maybe he did overpromise. Maybe he should retract that. But it's not a hanging offence. This is all a new thing. I mean, we all said Germany were wonderful. They'd all come out. They were the new messiah.
Mm-hmm.
And, next thing they know, they're all back up. They've had a huge spike and everyone's back indoors again.
Well, that's not quite true, is it? That's not quite true. I mean, Germany have handled it. Look, Germany were able, Graham, to get a testing and tracing scheme in place 3 months before we did.
Okay, well, fine. I mean, I'm not saying that that's right or it's wrong. Each country handled it better or worse. It's not a league table. I mean, at the end of the day, we have 50,000 people in this country die of flu every year. We're at 39,000 at the moment.
In a bad year. In a very bad year.
So we've got to keep this in proportion. That's all I'm trying to say.
All right, Graham, I get that. I just urge you to agree with me on this last point, which is they need to be a bit more straight with us sometimes.
Okay.
Do you agree?
Yeah, well, I don't think they were misleading. I think they might have overpromised in a terrible situation. That's all I'm saying.
Fair enough. Graham made the point well. Bird singing in the background. It's 6:45. Time for the news headlines with Bill Overton.
The Health Secretary insists the UK is winning the battle against coronavirus and the track and trace system is working well. The number of total patient deaths who tested positive has now topped 39,000. And it appears parents in England are choosing to keep their children at home rather than send them back to schools under eased restrictions. Weather tonight, dry and clear, mostly cloudier with the odd shower further north and for Northern Ireland with a low of 8 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. On the M4 going into town, there's a lane closed at junction 3 for Hayes because of an accident. The A5 Kilburn High Road southbound stays shut because of some unsafe scaffolding before Willesden Lane, so it's looking slow on the approach. It's also very slow in Tottenham on the A10, the High Road, in both directions at Seven Sisters because of roadworks. It's very slow on the A12 East Cross route going out of town between the Bow interchange and the Lee interchange. And in Canning Town on the A13 heading into town, a car's broken down on the entry Slit Road at Prince Regent Lane, so one lane is closed.
Coming up at 7 on LBC, Ian Dale.
On the LBC News Hour, an exclusive interview with the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, plus all the coronavirus news and more violence and protests in America.
Ian Dale on LBC.
Minions, did you know Sky Broadband Superfast guarantees your speed? No, Stuart, it doesn't guarantee you'll win the game. Or that your video will go viral. Or that you'll match with the love of your life. But Sky Broadband Superfast does guarantee the speed we promised or money back. So reliable, it's minion-proof. Sky, believe in better. Sky Fibre Area's only speed measured to hub must drop below min download speed for 3 consecutive days. 1 month subscription refund. Claim up to twice in min term after first fortnight. See sky.com.
Landlords, is your property empty? Are you struggling to find tenants? Then speak to Fine Fair, London's rent guarantee company. Fine Fair will guarantee your rent for 1 to 5 years with no commission, no management fees, no voids. Join the thousands of landlords already guaranteeing their rent in London and surrounding areas. Visit finefair.com because in uncertain times, nothing's guaranteed except your rent. Paid on time, every time. Subject to acceptance, T's and C's apply.
Hello? This is the most important piece of advice I'm going to give you in your life.
Hello? What was that, Dad? Hello? Dad, I can't even hear you, man.
You get me?
I didn't get it, Dad.
You didn't get it?
I meant...
You didn't...
Hello?
You don't speak plain English. You want to answer me back?
I'm answering you back.
You think your father is a... I am not going to repeat myself.
Oh, man.
Tired of bad connections? Enjoy great quality calls with Boss Revolution, the international calling app. Download the Boss Revolution app today and get £2 free call credit.
When it comes to finding something new, you can start the conversation at Hello You. Sign up and browse profiles for free at helloyoudating.com and start the conversation today.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC, The Nigel Farage Show.
Well, some pretty appalling scenes in many American cities, 40 of them operating something of a curfew system, which is pretty much being ignored. 6 nights of violence now, all, of course, sparked by what happened in Minnesota. The police officer is being charged with murder. But these riots are going on, and people are asking, what is Donald Trump doing? Well, he's in a difficult position. Now, he has done a sort of teleconference this afternoon, video teleconference. He's had on the phone state governors. He's had on the phone national security officials, and he's urging them. He's saying, put people in jail for 10 years. He's saying, call out the National Guard to quell the violence. And he did that there. He's been doing it on Twitter. And tonight at 7 o'clock, our time, 2 p.m. DC time, he'll be doing a big press conference. I've no doubt Ian Dale will be following much of that. But here's the truth. There isn't actually much Donald Trump can do to stop this, or can do to crack down on this. He doesn't have the power. And very few people this side of the pond understand it. It is a federal system in America, and law enforcement is down to mayors and state governors and not the president. And that's why you see him urging others to do things rather than acting himself, because he just does not have the power to do anything about it. We have seen in London, we have seen a couple of protests and some pretty bad behaviour and bad language, but luckily not the associated violence with it. Let's hope it stays that way. So, does the government overpromise and underdeliver? Is that the right strategy? Liam is calling from Streatham. Good evening, Liam.
Good evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. I want them to be ambitious. Of course I do. I really want Test and Trace to be a mega success, so that if we do get another outbreak, we can deal with it. But it's Matt Hancock over-promising. It drives me bonkers, Liam.
Yeah, absolutely. He's someone I've certainly kind of warmed away from in this process, given the promises about the testing capabilities we would have had. And the tracking and tracing has been a shambles since it all started.
Well, we actually gave up. Tracing people on about the 12th of March because we felt we didn't have the infrastructure to do it, whilst other countries like Germany push full steam ahead. I don't know. I mean, Liam, how would you like to see the government handle this?
Well, I mean, obviously, I know he's not your biggest fan, but Mr. Cummings really needs to go, because I kind of feel that as soon as he had a situation whereby he's seen the science, he acted in a different way, people just lost trust in the government and in him in particular. And the longer that goes on, it will just drag down all of the support that Boris otherwise would have had, unfortunately.
So do you think that Dominic Cummings is now damaging Boris?
Yes. Oh, 100%. You must surely as well. Surely this is like I don't.
Well, I'm Liam. I am terribly conflicted over this because we need Cummings to be there for the next few weeks. Those of us that want Brexit, because if he suddenly disappeared, maybe Boris would go soft and we'd finish up extending the transition period. So, sort of quite a big chunk of me says whatever I think about him is irrelevant. A big chunk of me says it's important that he's there, but another part of me says, that cock and bull story about going to Barnard Castle to test his eyesight. I mean, what do they take us for, Liam?
Well, this is the thing, is I think they've taken the public for largely, undermining the public's trust in them. And as soon as you say you can go out for a 30-mile round trip to test your eyesight, why bother going to Specsavers?
Yeah, well, there you are. I know. Liam, thank you. Mike from Croydon says, if you want proof as to what a world-beating system is like, just see the number of people who've called into your show to say they've been contacted by a tracker. None. We've obviously got the virus completely under control now. Well, Mike, I mean, it just is extraordinary. But there's still a few minutes left. 0345 6060 973. Tell me what the NHS said to you when they called you. Brian says on Twitter, I voted Boris, had high hopes, loved him as Mayor of London. Feared he's let the country down a bit, but I think Corbyn would have been even worse. Let's go up to Manchester again tonight and speak to Craig, who's a new caller. Good evening, Craig.
Hi there. Good evening, Nigel. How are you?
Good evening. I'm fine. And you?
Well, recovering from a bout of coronavirus.
Oh,
but
gosh.
Hey-ho,
oh, gosh.
Move on.
How badly struck down were you?
Well, I was out of action for about 3 weeks. Still recovering, but I'm better. Yes,
Good.
thank you.
Good. Well, I'm pleased to hear that. And hopefully now you've got the antibodies and you can't get this again. Or let's hope that's the case. I'm sure it is.
Yes, fingers crossed. I'm just calling in response to the track and trace debate that you have going.
Yes.
I've not been tracked or traced, and I've not been in contact with anybody to find out who I've been in contact with or what I should do going forward. I think I think people are totally confused with what's going on. I don't actually think anyone knows what's going on. They're all just taking it by chance, aren't they?
I'll try and be devil's advocate here. When did you contract coronavirus?
I got the coronavirus on, it would have been about 3 weeks ago now, so let's say the middle of April, middle of May.
Okay, well, I'm going to assume that test and trace is not going to be for people like you. It'll be for people who've got the infection now. Do you see what I mean? Do you see what I mean? So I think, in fairness to the government, I don't think we can criticise them for not contacting you because the system wasn't in place. But on the bigger point, they promised us by the 1st of June it would be up and running, and clearly, Craig, it isn't, is it?
No, of course not. And as I said to your researcher, if there was a system in place prior to that, like when they were saying about the all singing, all dancing iPhone app, which would use proximity sensors to say whether you were in close proximity to someone, what happened to that? I understand that there wasn't infrastructure for it.
Yeah, there are some civil liberties issues there too, aren't there?
Yes, of course. But, for those who wanted to opt into that sort of thing, I sure would have to try and keep myself safe and my family safe.
Yes.
They should have given people the option to at least opt into it.
Well, it's not ready. That's the truth of it, Craig. It is not ready. Let's hope it is before too long. And thank you for sharing with us. And well done for getting better. When do you start work again, Craig? He's gone. Lost him. Let's go to Samuel, who's calling from Whitechapel and is a new caller. Good evening, Samuel.
Hi, good evening, Nigel. Yeah. Nigel, I don't know if you noticed, in the past few weeks, the total number of deaths we had were much below Italy. Now we are about 5,000 deaths above Italy. Did you notice that?
I have noticed that, yes.
Yeah.
And
I think you're being very sparing in your criticism of Boris,
Well...
You're just holding back the punches.
Well,
another thing, Nigel. Can I make this point?
So I can't win here, really, can I? From the start, I have been fairly critical of the government. But you think I've been too soft on them, yeah?
I think you're being a bit soft, yeah.
Okay.
Everything they've done is wrong, but the main thing they're doing wrong is the masks thing. Instead of listening to SAGE, they should be listening to the countries that have had success and have dealt with this virus for many years, Even Israel insists that masks, I believe masks should be obligatory, and that instead of reducing the number of passengers into buses, let them come in as usual, keep the windows open, and make sure that every single person wears a mask.
Well, a lot of countries are wearing masks, of course, and Austria and large parts of America now insist on you wearing a mask, being outside. Many parts of Europe do too. Why do you think we don't insist on masks? Is this to do with scientific advice, do you think, Samuel?
No, they just think they're just arrogant. They think their way is better than those people who've had experience dealing with various types of viruses.
Well, that's certainly true, isn't it? When you look at the way Hong Kong, South Korea, places like that, they'd seen SARS, hadn't they, a decade and a half ago. Perhaps they were more prepared for it. So overall, you are deeply critical of the way this is being handled.
I'm very disappointed. I only voted Boris because of that clown, the Labour, Jeremy. Otherwise, I would never have voted Boris. I had misgivings about Boris. But as far as Dominic is concerned, you can't sack the PM, can you? He's a de facto PM.
Is that what you think? You think Cummings is running the country, Samuel, don't you?
And Boris is the joker.
Samuel, you are a very, very cruel man in so many ways. Thank you very much indeed for your call. Thank you, all of you, for joining in. Look, I've tried not to give my opinion, but I think it's ridiculous to stand up and promise the earth and keep failing to deliver. Be a little bit more straight with us. We all know you've got a very, very difficult job. We understand that bit. I will be back with you tomorrow at 6. At 10 tonight, it's Tom Swarbrick. Right now, it's going to be Ian Dale.
Thanks, Nigel. Schools are back, but are the pupils? Well, attendance has been anything from 40% to 70% if reports are to be believed. At 8, I want to know if you think now was the right day for schools to reopen, or has it all been a bit too quick? Today was also the day that those of us who were told we should shield until the 30th of June were now told we could come out of hibernation and meet one person each day at 2 metres distance. I'll tell you something for nothing, I wouldn't dream of doing that at the moment until I'm confident that the threat has more or less gone. Some shops, car showrooms and markets have reopened today. Emma Jones will be with us at 9 to take your business and retail calls.
On your radio, on Global Player,